Welcome once again. A very good morning to everyone. To begin with, we have Dr. Zogekar. May I request Dr. Zogekar to please chair this session? And a quick announcement, each speaker will be getting 10 minutes for their presentation. And if the time permits, at the end, we'll be having question and answer round. Dr. Zogekar, may I request you to please chair this session and invite our first speaker?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this update on intrascleral IOL fixation techniques. The intrascleral IOL fixation techniques have come a long way. If I remember correctly, Mr. Geber initiated it, and he had tough time publishing it through the peer review process. But it has now, what was on the fringe is now becoming a mainstream kind of thing, and it's getting widespread acceptability now. So I first invite my first speaker, Dr. Shamik Mukadam, to start with the session. His topic is intrascleral IOL fixation and an overview. Shamik?
Yes, Mandar, I'll just need you to stop sharing the screen.
I'll stop.
Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Shamik. Good to have you here.
Good morning, everybody. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Dr. Shamik, it's visible.
Good morning, Nivian. Good morning, Aditya sir. Good morning, Mandar. At the outset, I would like to thank Mandar and for inviting me for this session and this very good course on which we'll be talking about intrascleral or SF scleral fixated IOLs. So my topic, I'll start off with my topic immediately. Yeah, so IOL implantation in eyes with no or inadequate capsular support is a challenging scenario, and there is no universally accepted single technique that can be said that this is the one. However, the options available are anterior chamber intraocular lens implantation, scleral fixation of intraocular lens, which could be in the form of either sutured IOL, the glued IOL, or the flanged IOL, and iris fixation. So I'll be just giving an overview of how we are talking on this particular topic. The anterior chamber IOL, we all know the few advantages and quite a few disadvantages of this technique. I wouldn't be talking much on this because we all have kind of come out of it, and most of the VR surgeons would rather prefer going ahead with a scleral fixated IOL after a good anterior or maybe a complete posterior vitrectomy. But yes, this IOL placement technique is useful, especially in camp settings where anterior segment surgeon does not have access to vitrectomy machines, or the anterior segment surgeon does not have access or cannot refer his or her patient to a VR surgeon for the needful. So ACIOL, I wouldn't say it is completely out of vogue, but it is slowly dying off as a technique to be used on a routine basis. So then we go ahead with scleral fixated IOLs. We have commonly been using these two techniques. One is the conventional 9-0 or 10-0 Prolene fixation, which could be either a single knot technique or two point fixation techniques, or the Gore-Tex suture fixation technique, which is a 4-point and gives a better fixation. Additionally, the Gore-Tex, I had presented this in the last AIOC. The Gore-Tex is a suture material which doesn't get disintegrated. It is also a very, it doesn't cause any tissue reaction as such. So it's a very stable kind of a suture, and the lens stays stable in the eye in the position that the natural lens is. Moving on to intrascleral fixation techniques, we routinely use the glued technique, which was started by Dr. Amar Agrawal from Chennai, and he mastered the technique. He has brought it to the world, and it's been something which has been used quite a lot in the past few days. But then there is a newer technique which has come up, which is the flange technique, which would be mainly discussed by Mandar after I will be finishing my talk. So in this, we start off with marking the axis at which we want to keep the lens, put the lens inside, and also mark the 2.5 mm for making our flaps on the sclera. Once that is done, do a good cautery and marking of incisions for the flap on the sclera. Then with the flap is made with a then we fashion a flap in that particular area. In the partial thickness scleral flap is fashioned on one side and then on the other side as well. Once the flaps are made, we make a AC maintainer port in the sclera, and the AC maintainer is placed. Next comes with the MVR, we make scleral incisions so that we can pass the haptics of the lens. And then after making a clear corneal incision, we with a hand holding technique, we would catch hold of the haptic on one side, and it is then brought out through the same scleral opening, and then the other haptic is slowly brought out through the other opening. Once we have externalized both the haptics, we make a small lamellar tunnel with a 26 gauge needle, and the haptics are railroaded into these small tunnels which are made there. Once this is done, the flaps are placed back in position after applying a drop of tissue glue, and then the AC maintainer is removed and the lens pretty much remains stable over there. So once this technique is at the end of the procedure, we would just place, I tend to do a small air bubble being placed inside the eye in the anterior chamber, just to be sure that there is not much of movement of the lens and it remains stable. So this is what I would wanted to present as a glue diode technique over here. From here on, I will hand it over to Mandar, who would be presenting the similar kind of a scleral fixated technique in the flanged eye. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shamik. That was a very sum up overview of the current situation. So we'll take up from there. So we'll describe the next newer advances in the intrascleral fixation now. Just a minute, I'll share the screen. Can you turn off the timer, please?
Yes, Dr. Mandar, I'll take care of it. Don't worry.
Mandar, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Shamik, is there any tips for youngsters when they're learning the procedure? The most common thing I find is when you're doing the second haptic, sometimes the first haptic tends to slip out. I'm not able to hear you. You're muted, Shamik.
Shamik, please unmute yourself.
Sorry. That does happen, especially when initially when we are very new to the technique. Has happened a couple of times with me, and then you really have to fish that previous haptic back out and bring it back in place. What initially we can do is we can ask one of our trusted assistants. I'm calling here trusted because he or she has to be very good at what they are doing, because they have to hold the haptic very gently, because if they do it if they hold it very strong with the forceps, it can break. So we have to ask the assistant to hold the haptic for the time being, and the other thing that we can do is we can do a handshake of the other haptic as well with two forceps. One forceps pushing the haptic inside, the trailing haptic, and the other forceps catching hold of the haptic from the other side. So that way the IOL can mostly stay in place, and the first haptic won't roll back inside the eye. I think I have answered your question. Is it okay, Nivir?
Yeah. So somebody holds it, sometimes they tend to bend it, and then tucking it inside also becomes difficult.
Yes, that's why I said that a very trusted assistant would be helpful over there.
Thanks, Shamik.
The technique was described that you hold some kind of silicon piece.
I think Prabhu Bhaskar, I think in Arvind they are doing that. The stopper was
they used talk on that. I think.
Yeah. Thanks for including me in this wonderful webinar. Most of the times I don't trust my assistant. I always use silicone stopper in XNet, so that saves time and avoids hassles.
I think he'll cover in this presentation. So I'll start my presentation. This classical Yamanese double needle technique. So this Amar Agarwal, Professor Agarwal popularized this technique of glued IOLs, but there are some hassles in this surgery. Not everyone was very happy or very easy to adapt to this technique. So he has developed this technique with double needle technique. So I have no financial interest. So what are the advantages? It's a glueless and a sutureless technique. So you don't have to dissect the conjunctiva. You don't have to put a glue. No flap dissection is required. So as we begin with the complete vitrectomy and removal of capsular material tags, we can do a complete vitrectomy, or at least a thorough anterior vitrectomy is required, and complete removal of vitreous around the entry points where you're going to tuck the IOLs in the sclera. So I will just show this animation. So first, you insert a needle at one place in the sclera. Then you tuck the leading haptic into the bore of the needle, and then you insert another needle 180 degree apart and insert the trailing haptic inside it. Then you externalize it, pull it out. When both haptics are externalized to the wound, small bore openings, you create a flange with, you apply heat cautery, low heat cautery, and create a flange so that it doesn't go back inside, and tuck it inside. So we begin by marking the axes. Axes are marked 180 degree apart by using marker. It should be 90 degrees to the incision to facilitate the correct tucking of the haptics inside the needle. We pass the needle from point A is marked from 2 millimeters from the limbus. Another point is marked in clockwise direction, 2 millimeters parallel to the limbal with a small degree of angle in between. And we pass the needle. This is the surgical video. Okay. We pass the needle from this point to that point. We inject a lens inside, keep the trailing haptic outside of the globe. Then with the help of a vitreoretinal forceps, we grasp the haptic and just thread it inside the bore of the needle. Here I like to use a 27 gauge needle because the lenses that are available here do not accommodate, don't get accommodated inside the 30 gauge needle that we get here. So another needle is passed 180 degree apart. The 2 millimeter part of intrascleral portion of the needle is very crucial. Then the trailing haptic is threaded similarly inside. You thread it till the maximum concavity, then convexity, and then we pull both the needles out and externalize the haptics. Then we apply heat cautery to form a flange. You can notice that I am touching in the haptic here, which used to do in the earlier cases. Now I have modified the technique a bit. I will show you this later. And we tuck it inside, firmly inside the tunnel, and the case is done with. So, but the question is asked, why is 2 needles are required? Why not 1 needle? So This is the position where your second needle is going inside when you put a second needle, and this has to be the position from which you can easily insert the trailing haptic. If you pull it out first, then the lens rotates and this haptic goes much beyond. This will be your entry point, and it will goes much beyond this point. So you have to pull back. Even if you insert it inside the trailing haptic after flanging, this doesn't turn back totally here, right? So you still have to go. Your needle will be here, and you have to pull the lens to this side, and this causes some tension in this area of the IOL and this area, the junctions, and they may lead to further failures later in the course. So it's better to stick with the, if you use two needles, this will be the position from which you can easily thread the haptics and trailing haptic. But there are two problems with using two needles. The many problems people get is the slippage of opposite haptic in the vitreous or in the tunnel during flanging of the one haptic. So what I advise that you use 27 gauge needle, not a 26 gauge needle, because that creates a shorter scleral tunnel. We can adopt this technique by keeping one needle in place from the trailing haptic. I will show the video for this. So we are now externalizing this, but I'm not taking out the needles yet. So I use now a forceps to slowly take it out without causing traction on the other side. Hold with the forceps gently, create a flange now. See, here I'm not touching it. Then you can remove the other needle. So this will prevent the slippage of the opposite part. Then we tuck it and the surgery is over. So pointers for successful surgery as practice before the surgery: mark the axis correctly, orientation of wound of 90 degree, around 90 degree has to be observed. Always use two needles, that's what I would say, and try not to touch the cautery to the haptic. Just do it through the thermal radiation. So this is how it, before your first surgery, you should do this. Get a feel of how it goes inside, how much force is required without bending it. And the markings are important. I have already shown you that markings. So this 10 degree angulation here, 10 degree angulation here is required to accommodate this angulation of the haptics to the haptic-optic junction. Correct holding position is important. Don't hold too close. This is particularly important for the trailing haptic. It will not enter the needle. Instead, hold it far, slightly away, so that it goes easily inside and you can trade it. Flange creation has to be done by keeping the heat source away. As you can see, there is some distance. Only by the radiation heat I am creating a flange. By this way, it will not be seen visible outside. It will go inside the tunnel, plug the tunnel, and don't go inside. So the advantages of Yamane's technique is reduced surgical time as compared to sutured or glued IOLs. And there is advantage of flange, which I will show. The creation of flange. This is an experiment shown by Dr. Shin Yamane, where he has plugged it inside, flanged IOL in the porcine eye he has done, and put pressure stress on that eye. So they pulled it, and while pulling, you can notice the flange doesn't break, but the haptic junction breaks. And you can do it through a small pupil as well, without much problem. You can trail it through a small pupil also. And the complications can be intraoperative, haptic slippage, lens flip, and post-operatively can lead to vitreous hemorrhage and RD, as any other surgery can do. Thank you very much. The complications will be discussed later.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mandar. I would request Dr. Jogekar to please invite our next speaker as well.
Now I invite Dr. Aditya Kelkar for our next talk, which is on the single needle modification of Yamane's technique. Dr. Aditya?
Dr. Aditya, if you're trying to speak, you're on mute. I would request you to please unmute yourself. Dr. Aditya, you're not audible to us. May I request you if you could start on your camera as well and start sharing the screen for the presentation.
Yes, give me just 1 minute. I'll start sharing the video.
उसमें वीडियो
I'm going to talk about a slight modification in our technique of scleral fixated IOL. Like what Dr. Yamane usually does is he uses 2 needles, and of course he takes the haptics away. He takes the haptics out in one go. Whereas we have slightly modified this technique, and instead of taking 2 haptics simultaneously out, we take 1 haptic out first, fix it, and then only we go on to the next haptic. So this is the slight change in our technique that we follow. So this is what Dr. Yamane has described, a small animation to explain exactly what he does.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Aditya, but we are not able to see your screen. So if you could reshare your screen, that would be great.
So he keeps this needle hanging in the vitreous cavity. This is something that we do not like, and that's why we have modified our way of doing this scleral fixation technique.
Maybe we're not able to see the video.
Sir, you can stop sharing and stop the play option on the presentation. And
When
then
the needle is lying loose inside the vitreous cavity, it has a potential of damaging the retina or choroid and can cause potential vitreous hemorrhage. And therefore, it may be a good idea to take 1 haptic out first, make sure that this is perfectly flanged and in place, and then you can take the next haptic out. This also probably reduces the chances of subluxation intraoperatively during the learning curve, especially.
Dr. Aditya, if you're, could you share your screen? That would be much helpful for each one of us because we are not able to see your screen.
So these are the difficulties that I was talking about simultaneous explant. So this is what happens when you try to remove both haptics together. There is a chance that lens may slip.
Aditya?
And therefore we can flange 1 haptic first and then.
Okay.
Dr.
We'll go on to
Aditya,
the
we
next
still
one.
can't see your screen.
Instead of 30 gauge needle, which is not available in our country, we use 27 gauge or 26 gauge needle. And
Aditya?
you can use a McPherson's forceps through the main tunnel itself, instead of using a small.
Dr. Aditya, I'm so sorry to interrupt in between,
So
but
this is a patient who has a
can't see your
subluxated
screen.
cataract.
I guess he can't hear us also. Can you hear
It
us?
has to be through the scleral tunnel that we have to bring this haptic up, bring this.
Mandar,
lens
can you
up.
just call him up and tell?
Yeah. Just calling.
Or maybe we can have Prabhu's thing by the time.
Yes, we can do that. I would request our next speaker, Dr.
This is followed by
Prabhu,
anterior
please
vitrectomy.
start your screen and start presenting your talk. That would be
Mandar,
great.
just tell him we'll do it after Prabhu's.
But
Yes,
he's not
yes.
taking the phone.
I think that will be better. That will be
Yes,
better.
yes.
Probably
I'll share my screen now.
Please go ahead.
Then we do a conjunctival marking using the same
I think Aditya has to
marker which
stop.
Dr.
He's still
Amar Agarwal has
talking.
devised for his blue diamond.
He's not sharing his screen. I'll just quickly talk to him.
So it should not be a problem, isn't it?
No problem, no problem.
Yeah, I'll share my screen.
Yeah, that's all.
So let me share a video. So this summarizes the kind of work that we are doing at Aravind in the past few years. So let us move on to the video. So there's a case of traumatic dislocated lens wherein we've done the lensectomy and now we are moving on to XNet part. So you're seeing on either sides I'm doing the scleral grooves. These days I normally use the bent side port knife. So the idea is you kind of get a triangular sort of scleral groove with a broad entry, and it as you go distal it becomes narrower. So the broad entry is easy for tucking the aptic at the end of the surgery, and since it's narrower at the end, so there's no question of aptic dislodgement or aptic migration in the post-op period. So once this is done on either sides, 180-degree apart, so we can move on to XNet. So basically, XNet is all about exteriorizing the aptic in a very simplified manner without any intraocular maneuver. That seems to be the toughest task for doing esophageal, especially for a novice surgeon or an anterior segment surgeon. Always they have the fear of fall. So this is what triggered us and bringing out this technique. So you can see now this is essentially an unedited video. And now what the green thing what you're seeing is the XNet needle, XNet device. The back side of it, you can see the sclerotomy markers that we have provided. That's a 1.5 mm marker. So you can just before making the sclerotomy, you can have an quick idea. And you can this is a customized needle. The length of the needle is 17 mm, whereas the conventional needle will give you conventional 26 gauge will give you only 12 mm. So once you go inside, initial directions towards the mid-vitreous, then you change the direction at the pupillary plane. Try to come anteriorly and come towards the corneoscleral section that you have made already. So the current version of XNIT requires a larger section. We don't really recommend XNIT for clear cornea or foldable SFIOs for practical difficulties. We are still working on it. So you should not try to penetrate and come out. All you need to do is just sweep. Just sweep. When you complete the arc, the tip of the needle will be outside, and you can use a McPherson like this to prevent any entrapment of tissue over there. And once you see the tip of the needle, all you need to do is take the 3-piece IOL. The aptic of the 3-piece IOL is docked into the lumen of the 26 gauge needle. 4 mm of docking is generally adequate, not more than that. So once you do that, as you can see, each and every step that I'm showing now can be easily done by any surgeon, anterior segment surgeon or posterior segment surgeon, or a novice surgeon. Anybody can do it. The learning curve is really short. So once the docking is done, gently retract the needle. Gently retract it. At the same time, push the IOL inside. It should go as a single unit. Don't retract separately. Don't push separately. Do that gracefully together. So you're retracting the needle at the same time you're pushing the IOL. And you can see we're not going to do any intraocular maneuver here. We do something outside, and we're going to do something again outside at a different location. So now this needle aptic complex is gone inside. So now we are going to exteriorize the leading aptic. So using a McPherson forceps, you can what you see, the circular thing is the dual protection silicone stopper that we have provided. It's everything's pre-loaded. You don't have to do anything. You just take the device and use it. So take it close to the sclera using the McPherson forceps. Keep the McPherson forceps inside the foramen of the stopper. Wait for the aptic to come. Wait for the aptic to come. Retract the needle gently. So once you see the blue portion of the aptic, gently hold it and try to disengage the needle. So you can see simply at one go, the dual protection silicone stopper has been changed to from the shaft of the needle to the aptic. So this stopper, the idea of the stopper is to eliminate your dependency on the assistant. It temporarily stabilizes the leading aptic when you are going to maneuver your trailing aptic. So once you do this, you can actually move the silicone stopper to the very tip of the aptic and take it close to the sclera. That's what I'm doing now. You can see that. As it was discussed by the previous speaker, trusting your assistant is very critical. If you have a trusted assistant, that's great, but you may not be lucky at every time. So I generally use a silicone stopper. So when we do that, when we push it close to the sclera, you get additional intraocular length of the aptic, which helps in maneuvering your trailing aptic. So you can do the same thing on the other side. You may slightly increase the intraocular pressure at this stage for easy penetration, or you may simply close the lip of the corneoscleral section using a cotton tip applicator so that your penetration is easier. Once you do that, once the tip of the needle is inside, you need to again sweep it towards a corneoscleral section. Remember that the plane of your sweep should be above the aptic and above the optic. So you can again use a McPherson forceps here at this step. Sorry, I think there is. Let me adjust it. Yeah, got it. So you can use a McPherson forceps here to gently depress the corneoscleral lip and do a sweeping motion. Remember, we should not engage any tissue here. So it's very important that you don't engage any tissue over there. Otherwise, there will be an issue, when you are bringing the haptic out. So you can probably, once you are out, you may do a lateral motion to and fro and ensure you are free, that the needle is free from any tissue over there. So once you do that, now you can simply retract the trailing haptic. And normally I, flip it reverse, flip the McPherson forceps reverse and gently retract and push it inside to the lumen of the 26 gauge needle. This is like, our aeroplane landing on a runway. The tip of the trailing haptic should be facing downwards. At the same time, the lumen should be receiving it. It should be, you may slightly depress so that you just receive it. So what you need to do is you just simply hit the lumen and give a slight pressure so that it gets into the lumen well. So again, 4 mm of docking should be fine. Once you are comfortable, you retract the needle. Again, we are not going to do any intraocular maneuver. You can clearly see that. So now, we are going to exteriorize the trailing haptic. Take a McPherson once again. Go to the sclerotomy site and wait for the haptic to come. Gently retract the needle. So wait for the haptic to come. So it's a good idea to, again, catch hold of the haptic gently and then disengage the needle. The idea is when you do it without holding the haptic, what can happen is this stress can sort of have an impact on the other side. So because of the silicone stopper, your leading haptic is safe, but the haptic optic junction may give way. So that shouldn't happen. So it's a good idea to hold the haptic like this and disengage. So that gives a very clean exteriorization. So you can clearly witness that the haptics are absolutely intact, especially the tips are absolutely intact because we have not touched the tip at all. This is critical. Sorry, my video is again. Yeah. So this is critical because imagine if the tip is distorted, it's very difficult to push it into the narrow scleral groove. So it's very important that you safeguard your tip. As you can see, now I'm pushing into the scleral groove which I have made. I normally follow what Gabor-Shariat has taught us with a slight modification. I keep a broader entry, but you can always combine XNet with glued IOL. You can create a flap here and push it inside, or you can do Emanestic. You can create a flange and fix it. So that's up to the surgeon. But exteriorization is definitely made simple with XNet. That's the point we are trying to show here. So you can do the same thing on the other side. So one important tip that I would say is when you're pushing the haptic into the scleral groove, it's very important you note the movement of the optic. Whether the haptic goes inside or not is assessed by the movement of the optic. If the optic turns as you're pushing inside, definitely your haptic is going into the right plane. So that sort of ensures that your tucking is fine. That's very important for your long-term stability of IOL. So that's something that everybody has to keep in mind. So yeah, that's it. We're still working on the ways to simplify the haptic fixation. Very soon, probably will come out with a device. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prabhu. I request Dr. Jogekar to please invite our next speaker. Well, I guess Dr. Jogekar is not able to hear us. May I request Dr. Naveen to please go ahead and present the talk?
Dr. Aditya, Dr. Aditya is there.
Okay, Dr. Aditya is back. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, please start, Aditya.
Dr. Mandar, can you see the screen?
Yes, now.
Yeah. So this is a slight modification of Dr. Gabor-Shariat's, Dr. Yamane's double needle fixation. what this is an animation which shows what Dr. Yamane does is the double needle technique, where he engages both the haptics internally, and then these haptics are brought out under the conjunctival space simultaneously. When you practice this technique during the learning curve, there are always chances that this double needle technique may not come handy and the lens may slip. And so we decided a slight modification where we engaged the first haptic like what Dr. Prabhu just showed us. So this is the technique of Dr. Srini Yamane, bilateral simultaneous externalization of the haptics. So when Dr. Yamane does this technique, this is how it looks. And when we do it, this is how it is going to look. I will just show you. So we have also engaged the haptics simultaneously in the 26 gauge needle. And while we try to bring the haptics out, the lens slips inside. And if it happens with one haptic is fine, but if it happens with both the haptics, then there's always a risk of an anterior segment surgeon may have to call a retina surgeon on table. So what we decided is that we can at least flange one haptic first outside and then only go ahead with the second haptic. Because our country we don't get 30 gauge needles, so the snug fit of the haptic is not possible. So we use 26 or 27 gauge needles, McPherson forceps for the scleral tunnel trailing haptic. So this is the video which shows our technique of simple haptic fixation. Anterior vitrectomy is carried out after this subluxary cataract was removed. Chamber is filled with viscoelastic. This is a marker designed by Dr. Amar Agarwal for blue scleral fixation iron. It also allows us to track the path of the needle, so it at least can go oblique and make a small scleral copy of itself. Is threaded into the needle. And once the first haptic is externalized, only then we are going to proceed with the other one. This technique can be especially useful for beginners so that they don't land up with complete dislocation of lens during scleral fixation of the eye. The main port itself, we engage the haptic and then it is externalized and then flanged using the cutting. So that's how this technique works. Now I will proceed on to my next talk about complications of scleral fixated IOL. Just allow me a minute. Where is the video?
Just yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Aditya, can I have a question meanwhile as you're opening the next presentation?
Aditya?
Dr. Aditya, can you hear us? Yes, he can't hear us as well.
Dr. Mandar, are you seeing the video?
We can't
No,
see the video,
no.
doctor.
No.
Just pause the video.
First, let's start this.
Pause the video, please.
Yes.
And go to this.
Doctor, can you hear us, Dr. Aditya?
Maybe maximize this first.
Dr. Mandar, I guess Dr. Aditya can't hear us as well.
Aditya, can you hear us?
All right.
He started, yeah.
I hope, Mandar, this video is visible or not?
Yes, yes, yes.
Dr. Aditya, you're on mute. If you could
Dr.
unmute.
Mandar, are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, yes, we can see the screen. Please go ahead.
Hello. हाँ येत आहे एक वर दिसतेच ते.
Huh. Okay.
चालतं.
All right. So this is a presentation about complications of the scleral fixated IOL. This is a patient who is post RK. So we are doing the Yamaha scleral fixated IOL in this case. So first needle, both the needles are inside the vitreous cavity right now. The haptics are well engaged, and I am quite confident here that it is going to go smooth. But then, as I was retracting the needle, I realized that the lens is going somewhere else. It was a clear indication that probably the haptic has started to slip, and so I was actually very careful in catching it as soon as it comes out, but it didn't come out at all. And there was some bleeding already in the conjunctival space, so that made things a little worse. Then I kept on holding on to assistant, holding on to the haptic, brought the other haptic into the anterior chamber, and then repeating the procedure. So here the role of assistant is very important. He's holding on to the haptic on the other side. So as soon as the haptic is out, we flange this, and then that's the end of the surgery. The same thing is repeated on the other end. So this is a way to manage intraoperatively slipped haptic. The lens is now well centered. Same thing can be done with the help of a trocar, just in case you are not confident with the needle technique. This is a patient who had a dropped nucleus, so that's why you see a small opening on the superiotemporal side for the fragment opening. So luckily, at least one haptic is still outside. This was also almost going in completely, but luckily we could rescue that. And we make a slightly bigger flange. On the other side, because there is conjunctival chemosis, I decided to open the conjunctiva and put a trocar through the the sclerotomy, again we use our intraocular forceps, engage the tip of the haptic in the forceps itself, take the trocar out, and then the haptic can be brought out and then flanged. Conjunctiva then has to be cauterized or sutured depending on how big the opening is. But again, the lens comes in stable. And this is another video where the first haptic has been flanged now. Now we are moving ahead to the second one. And unfortunately, the lens is twisted and we don't know exactly what is happening with the first haptic, but it is almost certain that it is also dislodged. So we bring that haptic out, but we can't reintroduce it into the needle, and so we have to cut this flange. And the lens did get completely 180 degrees internal rotation, but this is a non-aspheric IOL, so it doesn't really matter how the lens is positioned in the sclera. So once again, the flanges are made and the lens goes back. So that's about the haptic story of Yamani's scleral fixated IOLs. Thank you, Dr. Mandar, for inviting me here on this.
Thank you, Aditya, for sharing your tips and tricks and your technique. Thank you, Aditya, for sharing your tips and tricks, complications, and management. Now, next speaker is Dr. Nivian. Nivian, you ready? Yeah.
Yes,
we are
Mandar.
talking about Histi Flex custom IOL, specifically new custom designed IOL for intrascleral fixation. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mandar. A very good morning to one and all. So I'm going to be talking about a new innovative lens design, the CMT Flex IOL for the treatment for aphakia. So I have no financial interest in the product of the presentation. So I'm just going to run through a small video of a 360-degree subluxated lens, which was planned for a lensectomy with a secondary IOL fixation. As you know, all innovations come with the question why, and that's how my innovation started 2 years back. So already we had all the speakers go through all the techniques. We had the sutured SFIOL techniques for more than 2 decades now. And then came the glued IOL technique, which is modified from Chariot's technique, tucking it into the haptics. And then you had the XNIC technique by the Arvind group, and Prabhu showed how they externalized the haptic and the usage of the stopper. And then the Yamane's technique and various modifications. But these were all using the existing 3-piece IOL, the different techniques that were performed. So I thought, why not come up with a new lens design for such types of aphakic patients or secondary IOL implantation? As all of you have already mentioned that for any secondary IOL fixation, the most important steps is a 0-180 degree marking, because that helps in the stability and fixation of the lens. So here again, we are making a 2 by 2.5 scleral flaps on either side. And then 1.5 millimeters away from the limbus, a 23 gauge sclerostomy is made on either sides. So now here in this particular case, I'm just using the same sclerostomy to puncture into the nucleus and making sure I don't drop it inside, and using the cutter through the other 23 gauge sclerostomy which is available. So doing a little bit of vitrectomy behind the lens and then puncturing into the lens, and then doing a lensectomy with a combination of aspiration and cutting. As you can see, this being a relatively soft nucleus, it's not much difficult. But as we are surgeons, we all know how the scenario changes if it goes inside. So I was just making sure I don't drop it inside. I can finish it in the anterior approach itself. So everything went on well. So this is the new CMT Flex design, a single piece hydrophilic lens, which has got a specialized T-shaped haptics. So that is the trademark of this lens design. So these T haptics, when comes out of the sclerostomy, opens up and prevents the lens from going back inside. So that will be a simpler surgery to avoid the tucking or usage of any sutures. As you can see, it goes through a clear corneal incision, and when you're injecting the lens, the T-shaped haptics come out first. So it is gently the head or the neck can be grasped, but at this time we are not pulling away the lens because it can cause it to detach it from this thing or any breakage. So we're just injecting the entire lens, and we can keep the trailing haptic at the wound or even over the iris. So once that is done, you can see we are slowly removing the T-shaped haptics. You can see there'll be a pop sound when it comes and it opens up, and then you just have to leave it. So these specially designed haptics is what prevents it from falling back inside. So this is just a small animation clip. One more trick is when you load the lens, make sure that the T junction is there in the center so that it comes out first. Like in even glued IOL, you want the haptics to come out first so that it's easy to grasp. So it can be injected with any IOL cartridge and grasp the head, which is very ideal, and then pull it out of the 23 gauge sclerostomy. And you can see once it comes out, it just opens up and it stays like that. For the second haptic, the same handshake technique is used using a Nishi grasping forces, which is serrated forceps, because these are hydrophilic lenses. And you can see the second haptic is being transferred. And the second haptic is also gently just brought out of the sclerostomy. So this is practically the end of the surgery, as there's no suture. I already said, you can always check for the integrity of the lens. These are always well centered because it's got a large optic size. So once the surgery is over, you can use the glue, or you don't have to. You can even suture or leave the flaps right now, and that will be practically the end of the surgery. So we have almost a year and a half follow-up of these patients. These are the immediate one-day post-op pictures showing a few edema. And this is the 1 month post-op pictures. You can see round pupils. And we're also doing the study on UBM to see how the position of the lens and how it sits compared to the other SFIOLs. And also OCTs through the sclera to see how the material behaves under the sclera in long-term follow-ups. So we have this is very easy method and a lens that can be used. And these are some of the publications in our local journals. And very happy that recently in JCRS, it has been accepted as an innovative design for aphakia and post-cataract surgeries. So we have also done it in a lot of traumatic patients where the iris is not there. So this is one of the cases, which a post-traumatic eye, which came to us for a secondary IOL. I have only the pictures you can see. So we had to do the CMT flex IOL, and also because of the superior iris defect, we did an SFT also, and then the patient is doing well. So they can be used as an initial procedure or as a secondary procedure, also as a planned surgery also. So this was another case of a traumatic aphakia with secondary glaucoma, long-standing and not controlled with medical management. So we had planned for a combined trab surgery with an T-flex IOL. So basically what I'm trying to say is where all you can use your secondary IOLs or the glued IOLs, the same indications can be used for this also. So there's actually a glaucoma surgeon who did the superior trab. And once he fashioned the flap and mitomycin C, not going to the details of the flap. Yeah. So once the trab was done superiorly, these are the Nishi grasping forceps that I was talking to you about. You can see the serrations. So these serrations helps in better grip of the IOL so that it does not bite into the lens when we are exchanging the IOL. And these are the Pranav forceps, T-flex forceps. As you can see, only the tip is broad. So this helps in easily grasping only the head, or the other VR forceps sometimes because of the sharp edge can bite into the lens. So these are some of the two specially designed forceps also that come. As I've already mentioned about the loading and the lens, I think you can use any IOL cartridge. And the other part is it's a totally single piece and a hydrophilic design. So it's forgiving. So when you do the handshake technique and any maneuver inside the eye, it does not cause any tissue damage. As you can see here, the slight modification is because we had the trab superiorly. This method is easy because you go head on. So you don't have that angle to catch it. So you're injecting the lens, and through the other side, you're grasping the T. And then after the lens is injected, you can see you just gently have to bring it out, and then it comes out very easily through the sclerostomy. And now you can see the other side again transferred, catching the head on. That is the most ideal thing if you can catch it head on and then bring it out. But here you can see we have another problem. We have the sommering ring, or the residual of the cortex that is there in this case. So I didn't want to leave it behind since we already done a good trick. So just bringing it into the anterior chamber and using the IOL scaffold technique here. So keeping the T-flex as a scaffold here. Sometimes these are very difficult to remove. So I prefer to do the phaco to remove these pieces because it's relatively harder than how it seems to look like. So you can see the nucleus piece, the sommering rings being removed. So once it's done, because it was a long-standing case, we just had to release some adhesions of the iris. So that is what is causing the distortion of the pupil and not the lens or anything. So we just release some of the synechiae in the periphery. So once that was done, you can see the surgical PI that is there, a round, well-centered pupil, and the patient is doing really well post-operatively. So at the end of the surgery, we are just gluing the scleral and the conjunctival flaps, let in some air bubble because the trab was done superiorly. So this was immediate day 1 week picture. You can see a good filtering bleb, and then you can also see a well-centered clear cornea, and it is situated in such an angle that even when you have good dilatation, it does not rub against the iris. Just happy to share that this particular video was my fellow, and we have also got selected as the top videos for ASCRS at the coming ASCRS that is happening. Thank you once again to everybody, and special thanks to Mattar for including me in this special IC. Thank you. It was great.
Thank you, Niven. That's an interesting technique and innovation. And congrats for your awards.
Thank you.
Questions from the
Niven, I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations. I've already told you it's a wonderful design.
Thanks.
Yeah. So do you provide IOLs in different dimensions? The white to white varies from patient to patient. So have you thought about it? I think I have asked you also before.
That's a good question, Uday. Right now we have it only for the standard eyes because the overall diameter now what we have is 14. So anything that comes in the normal eye range between 11 to 12, I think it is easy to do.
Easy to,
for myope, hypermetropes, what we do is, because we do this sclerostomia 1.5, like how you people are saying, we can go up to 2 or even 2.5 when hypermetropes are smaller eyes. But for large eyes, it can be customized. So if you can give the measurements, the company is ready to make customized lenses for a larger diameter eye.
Okay.
Right now, it comes only in one size.
I was just thinking, as you're showing the video, if we can provide an hinge in between the optic and the T, that can sort of stretch whenever we want. I don't know how far it's feasible, but I'm just thinking it aloud. So that if you can, the IOL can actually stretch for larger eyes. I don't know.
That's nice, so that we can titrate it according to the size of the eyes.
Yeah.
Make it shorter or longer. Sure, I'll just.
So the same IOL can stretch as and when you want. I don't know.
Niven,
Yes,
what is the incision size for this injection?
So it's a standard 2.8 because the same cartridge that we use for our foldable IOLs for comfort sake, it's extended.
Haptic is larger, no? Haptic is larger, so it might need a larger one.
We worked a lot of R&D to make sure the material and the thickness of the lens. No, initially we had a thicker lens. This thing we were working so that it goes through normal 2.8 normal phaco incision, and the cartridges you can use your same IOL cartridges. So initially when it was thick, it was finding it difficult, like you said, but then they were causing some breakage and then folds in the lens. So now we have titrated the water content in such a way there is good elasticity. At the same time, the strength is also good, so that as Prabhu said, it should not chip away when we are pulling it. So we have also done a lot of study on the tensile strength. So how far you can pull it before it snaps.
Right.
But then the wound is always going to be leaky, isn't it?
That sclerostomy also. So Y23 gauges, according to that, we have made those T junctions, that round thing, the diameter in such a way that it snugly fits in. So even though you're using the forceps, it might expand, but this fits in so that there is no leakage. So that some people suggested we need to make it thinner, so whether it can go to a 25 gauge. But when we make it thinner is when there is a gap, and that can cause wound leakage and hypotony. So we wanted to make sure that it is tightly fitting in the sclerostomies that it comes out.
Have you seen any scleral erosion over that T, since it's going to be bulky under the sclera in the long run? Have you seen now? I think you must be doing it for the past 2 years now.
Correct.
Sure.
Thanks to COVID, we had a 1 year lag period.
Yeah.
Like, we are watching the, as of now, only one patient I have seen that I can see it, the haptics translucently under the microscope, but under the conjunctiva. But as of now, we don't have any reactions. I think we need longer follow-ups, or I have to see studies how the material reacts under the skin.
One patient I saw in Aravind is doing well.
Oh,
So
oh
just
nice.
wanted to-
Chennai. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, nice. I wanted to ask you one thing in your particular procedure, which is different from the Hemanes. Can it be done through the clear cornea also? But because you're externalizing the
Yes, yes. Clear cornea, we are kind of working on it. What we have seen is when you try to dock the trailing aptic, the optic tilts a lot. Though it's transient. Once you dock it and pull, it's going to be all right. But it doesn't look nice. So I really don't want to recommend
because
it.
of the pressure that they're putting over the cornea.
Yeah,
That
yes. So we're still working on how to, when we reduce the distance, you are either the needle has to be designed slightly different or the aptic has to, you need to do something. We are still working on it.
Right.
So that's why we, for the current version, we recommend for the larger section.
the larger section. Okay.
I have a few questions to Aditya. Can Dr. Aditya hear us?
Dr. Aditya, are you there? And if you can hear us, please unmute yourself. I guess
For that
Dr.
matter, anybody who has done M&A technique, I don't know if Aditya could hear us. I personally, I've done few cases of M&A technique. I have seen, unless you use a 30 gauge thin wall needle, which he recommends, especially when we use 26 or 27 gauge, the flange that we create may not be consistent. You don't really get good flange every time. So the flange size is probably smaller than the diameter of the sclerotomy that you make. Sometimes the optics pop out. It gets externalized in the post-operative period, or sometimes there is a chance that it can go inside.
Yeah, that's
So
why
I've seen few cases, and then that made me to stop.
flange creation is,
Anybody has seen a similar thing?
the flange creation is a tricky part in actually, because you should not touch the haptic
Yeah,
with heat. It should be the radiant heat which melts it and it forms like a bulb.
yeah.
So it should not form a flat thing.
Yeah, my point is the size of the flange.
Yeah, that's
If you're using a 30 gauge thin wall needle, the sclerotomy is very thin, so you can actually bury it.
No,
But if
it's
you're
not
using
the problem
26 or
of
27.
it's not the issue. What causes problem is the shape of the bulb that you produce. The shape should be like a conical. Okay, what we when to produce is a ring. When you touch it, it produces a ring, and the ring sits outside. Okay, so that causes externalization. The thing is that the bulb should be like this, concave, and it should go inside and plug it.
I also
It
feel
should be like twice the size of original haptic, and you can achieve that by titration by heat. But don't touch it. If you touch it, it will cause a ring, and it will not go inside.
okay.
And
Another thing I want to know
26
is
gauge is not ideal. 27 gauge is
27, yeah.
not,
Another thing which I want to know is when you are making that intrascleral 2 mm tunnel from the sclerotomy, you create an angle and go inside and exit inside the eye, isn't it?
Yes.
So don't you think that when we bend the needle and try to dock, will it not give way inside the tunnel? So eventually at the end of the surgery, will it not act like routine 2-point fixated IOL?
The tunnel doesn't give up. Usually it is there because sometimes it slips inside, and I have seen that it holds inside the tunnel also.
Okay.
In few cases it has slipped. So in earlier cases, so it stays inside the tunnel, and I have sutured that tunnel and closed it sometimes.
Okay. I have seen in some of the recent videos of M&A, what he does is these days, he actually cuts the aptic. He sort of, after externalizing it, I am seeing him, cutting the aptic to, for a tilt issue, and then he flanges.
Yes. You can cut around 1 millimeter. That I think he says. Yeah. Any more questions?
All right. Anyone is having any questions from the previous talks also? If you could want to ask, please go ahead and ask the question. If you have any question, please feel free to ask because we have some time in our hand.
Mandar, in our panelists, any of us use retropupillary claw lenses because we are all talking about different SFIOL techniques. Is there still a use?
I don't use.
Shaunak, I don't use it, but Shaunak does. So he does that Iris Claw lenses, and he's quite happy with it. And I tried doing it. I had a great fall twice because the haptics on one side broke off, and then the lens was dangling on the other side. So, but then he does it on a regular basis.
Yeah, de-enclaving those is a little difficult.
Yeah, enclaving it in the iris, I think he's quite happy with it. Initially, we had a few pupil with stretched pupil like the cat's eye and all those things, but then now we have, over a period of time, we have kind of gotten over it.
Correct.
Niveen, I think you have done a study, isn't it? Comparing Iris Claw and SFIL. Can you share some of the conclusions made out of the study?
It was a combined thing with Aravind only. So Iris Claw lenses were more used as a primary procedure in the primary sitting in most of the cases that we had found out, whereas the SFIOL seemed to be a planned procedure. As far as the initial inflammation, I think it was initially more in the claw lenses because it was done as a primary procedure and there is some amount of clipping of the iris tissue. But whereas in the SFIOL, since it was done as a planned procedure after a week or 10 days, I think the post-op inflammation and the results were better. But the visual acuity was the same in both the groups actually at the end of 1 month or 6 weeks. So that was something that was interesting. So the choice is definitely the surgeons. I think we should plan according to the case, and as these techniques require some amount of learning curve, so that is why it cannot be done as a primary procedure unless the surgeon is trained. So I think the choice should be made based on the patients and the type of surgery. Anything from your side, Prabhu? I think the glaucoma was the only issue with. I think that was not there in the secondary IOLs. But then in our study, we did not do PI in any of the claw lenses. So the glaucoma was either due to the inflammation from the iris or uses of excess viscoelastics also.
Was there any difference in the rate of CME between Iris Claw and SFIOL?
Iris Claw group was slightly higher than the SFIOL group.
SFIOL. Okay.
Niveen, just a doubt. This just gives you another way to go ahead with another study, that you can do your retro, meaning you have done SFILs in the past, the sutured ones, and you can compare them to your T-flex with the thing in mind that how much astigmatism is improved, or what is the refractive error that is different in your T-flex as against the scleral fixated that we used to do once upon a time. Because invariably the scleral fixated with the sutures tends to be a little tilted, whether we like it or not. It always gets tilted. So the astigmatism that is induced is on the higher side in that. I don't know, you can try it out on the T-flex, how much of the induced astigmatism happens with the T-flex. So that gives you an idea to do another study on that.
That's a nice idea. I think we should do it as a combined thing because we have 3 different techniques by 3 different surgeons. So we Prabhu can initiate it and
study of the angle.
Correct. I think Prabhu can write up this thing and share it to us.
Yeah, I think you should be doing it. I always seen, the problem is most of us, except you probably, we all stick on to one technique. If I'm a VR surgeon and I keep doing only SFIL, I don't do Iris Claw. And the people who are well versed with Iris Claw, they don't want to try SFIL. When we try to study, also the problem is surgeon bias comes into picture. One surgeon, we don't have surgeon doing both. Good expertise in both techniques. That's something which we need to also realize that becomes a limitation when we study. But nevertheless, we should study.
It is more to do with, I think, the comfort level that we are in. Basically, I think so.
Exactly.
So we are more comfortable with doing SFIOLs with the suture technique. We just continue with doing that because we want to get the case done with the technique that we are happy with. There are exceptions to the rule, like Niveen and Mandar over here, who have graduated from doing only the routine sutured IOLs and going ahead with doing Yamanes and the new T-flex that they are doing now.
No, that is why I'm suggesting a multi-center trial. That's why I'm telling Prabhu.
Yeah. I think we'll take it forward.
Yeah, definitely. At least the technique part should be studied.
Yeah. From this IC, we'll take it forward.
Yes, sure. So we will close the IC.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for attending and taking my invite and getting here. So we'll close this IC now.
Thank you, Madam.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Nivian. Thank you. Thank you, Mandar.
Amit, hi.
Thank you.
All right, a big thank you to Dr. Zogekar for chairing the session, and a big thank you and congratulations to all the speakers for finishing it on time, so we can hand over the conference on time to the next session.